This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin FREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol Live. We have breaking news within the last hour. There has been a fatal incident at the U.S. Capitol. Apparently, a vehicle is slammed into a barricade. One person is dead. 2 Capitol police officers have been injured in the incident. We're going to go over here. We have NBC News up right now. Once again, this has happened within the last hour. We do not know what is going on.
Quickly, again, a vehicle ramming into a barricade outside of the U.S. Capitol, injuring 2 U.S. Capitol police officers. We know the FBI also investigating. Our correspondents on Capitol Hill and, of course, the Justice Department also investigating, trying to get to the bottom of exactly what happened here. And we are going to continue to bring you updates throughout the day. At this hour, it appears as though 3 people have been taken to the hospital in the wake of this incident. We will have full details coming up on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Kristen Welker.
It does seem that they do have a suspect in custody currently. Well, shit, I joined NBC as they were going off, so find another news source, see if we can.
U.S. Capitol police officers have been injured after someone rammed a barricade outside the U.S. Capitol complex. You're looking at live pictures from several different angles of the scene. What we know at this point is that sometime around 1 o'clock this afternoon, a car was able to make its way to one of the barriers that is always up outside the U.S. Capitol building along Constitution Avenue. That would be the side of the Capitol that runs between the Capitol itself and the Senate office buildings. So the Senate side of the U.S. Capitol. That car hit one of the barricades. And as we understand it from sources that our Justice correspondent Pete Williams has been able to talk to, the person hit that barricade and then jumped out of the car, we believe, with a knife. 2 U.S. Capitol police officers engaged with that suspect on some level, as we understand it. Those 2 officers were injured. The person who was in that car with the knife, as we understand it, was shot. All 3 of them have been taken to a hospital in the area. DC Fire and EMS.
So the original report I saw said fatal incident.
And now,
since we've been watching the stream, I have not heard them mention someone dying. So I'm changing.
Slammed up against that barricade. Investigators, obviously from U.S. Capitol Police. We understand the FBI has been brought in to assist as well. You can see investigators taking photos, walking around this vehicle, gathering information. On the lower part of your screen on the right side here, you see several black SUVs with flashing lights. The top part there, you see an aerial picture of the Capitol complex that has been locked down in a sense. We don't believe that it was heavily occupied at this point because Congress is not in session. Still, the campus has been locked down as a result of the threat that we see has happened outside. Now, we have Monica Alba, one of our White House reporters, who's been watching this scene.
A fucking Hummer ad.
To gather information. Monica, what's the latest you can tell us about what's unfolding in Washington?
Aaron, it seems per law enforcement officials and also those on the scene that at least this immediate security threat has been contained, given that everybody involved, it seems at this point, has been transported to the hospital. What is so notable there is that new reporting from our colleagues Tom Winner and Pete Williams that the person who did ram this barrier and who got through that initial perimeter fencing then got out of the vehicle brandishing a knife, and that is what led the U.S. Capitol Police.
So I believe we're looking at the vehicle that rammed the barricade.
Some of those officers were injured when the vehicle hit them, and that barrier, just so people can understand sort of where it is situated, is at least 2 roadblocks removed from getting very close to the U.S. Capitol. But this fencing that's in place
given
right now,
given the circumstances, one has to wonder if this is a crazy QAnon nut.
ID proving that they work there, have business at the Capitol. It's a heavily highly controlled system.
That's just speculation at this time.
This person rammed that barrier regardless of whatever checks were going on, and we are waiting to get more information about that. But this is also notable because just in the last few weeks or so, Aaron, a larger perimeter fence was removed. There was so much non-scalable fencing around all the U.S. Capitol complex with barbed wire on top. That got taken down because a couple of months from the January 6th violence, lawmakers and people had really called for that to be scaled down, for there to be less of a National Guard presence protecting the Capitol.
Republicans had called for it to be scaled down, and this was the exact thing that they were worried about.
Heightened alert and security posture that we expect to remain for the coming weeks, at least until President Biden gives his joint address to Congress, which is something else that law enforcement has been monitoring as a potential high alert day, as you would with any presidential movement, but certainly one where this president would go to the U.S.
I'm not exactly sure what's going on. The first I heard was a fatal incident. I haven't heard anybody on this stream mention that there was a death, so I changed my headlines.
Shortly before,
we know that 2 Capitol police officers were injured. The suspect rammed the barricade, got out of their car, brandished a knife, was shot, but apparently lived and is in custody at the moment.
He's always traveling with a group of aides who bring him up to speed on any national security issues, but we don't have a statement yet from the president or the White House officially.
That's what I'm going to assume, that this is some sort of patriot militia, thinks the election was stolen, Joe Biden's a socialist. I would almost put money on it.
But really, since the coronavirus pandemic, since some of the protests over racial justice that we've seen over the last few months here in the nation's capital, you have a huge fence around the White House as well. That has stayed in place.
That's just speculation on my part.
But the fencing even that protects the White House itself, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, is something that's been increased because you did have a situation where a car rammed a barrier some years ago.
That I know.
So this is now, of course, happening
I'm not
closer
stoned
to the
enough for
Capitol,
this shit.
where Congress, we should mention,
I haven't even smoked my first bowl.
So lawmakers aren't there, but there are
had to get up and do some work and
continue to constantly report.
I cashed out what was in this from last night. That is all I've smoked
breaking
today.
Around other legislative priorities, and we know that our colleagues down there on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue remain sheltered in place given this heightened posture as we wait more information from officials who hopefully will brief in the next hour or so to provide even more background on what occurred here, Aaron.
All right, Monica Alba for us near the White House right now. Monica, I'm going to ask you to stand by.
Oh, shit. I didn't mean pause it.
And we'll come back to you as you're able to gather more information.
So, according to Disclosed TV that Scrappy just sent us, 2 U.S. Capitol police officers seriously injured by a car at Capitol checkpoint. Driver shot and in police custody. All 3 are currently at the hospital. The incident was reported at 1:02 p.m. A car rams into barrier outside of Capitol building's north side. 2 officers hit by the vehicle. 3 people hospitalized. Capitol is on lockdown. Major police presence. So, happened about an hour ago. Reported at 1:02 p.m. Eastern Time.
Have essentially been there every day.
That's probably all we're going to know.
Really, we saw this
until probably this evening, maybe tomorrow.
Presence with these, with the fences and with a large number of National Guardsmen that has been reduced.
All I saw was something incident at the Capitol, and given January the 6th,
and I thought
given
that
all the threats
to the building,
they might still they'll walk out with the podium.
Less fencing there is, how fewer guardsmen that were present. Of course,
I love that Dave was so hung up on the fact that they stole a door. That cracked me. Like, Dave's obsession with that door cracked me up more than anything.
And from my sources who are on the ground, and
because it boggled his mind why they would want that door. I'm like, it's a nice door. I mean, come on.
That they are still in lockdown, waiting to hear more. But the scene does seem contained now that they have an officer had shot the person who was driving, as well as the other 2 officers who have taken to the hospital. I think it's worth noting saying that there was a helicopter that came. I haven't really heard of anything like that in my time covering Congress. A helicopter flew down to remove those who were injured as well.
That was the thing, that the helicopter landing
we're waiting
in the courtyard there. That was that's a freak incident. One of the things that made me like, oh, this is serious. Something's going on. Maybe we need to stream.
Barricade this afternoon, and so I think we're all waiting to hear more.
As I was sitting here in my boxers,
and they're starting to kind of give out more information now to reporters like myself, and we're standing
just
by
digging
to
around,
what new
like, oh shit, I need to stream this.
Alana, I'll ask you to stick with us, give you an opportunity to check for more information that may be coming your way as we look at some of the live pictures coming from Capitol Hill right now. I believe this is a helicopter shot from our affiliate there in Washington, WRC. Obviously, Washington is a no-fly zone, so the helicopter is far outside.
I mean, I doubt somebody's standing there with like a stick up in the air.
The Capitol complex showing us
could be a drone though.
Buildings that are in that are part of that complex, buildings that would be under that lockdown, along with the Capitol itself. Alana mentioned
that was what I was frantically trying to brush my hair and get dressed while the 4-minute countdown was going on.
They have a launch pad. U.S. Park Police have a launch pad just a couple of miles away from the Capitol building itself, across the Anacostia River. I lived in Washington for many years, and in the Navy Yard area, which is just a couple of blocks away from the Capitol complex, and so that helicopter.
Also, for those of you that might not have joined us for the Patriot Patrol last night,
been able to dispatch a chopper very quickly.
I had to take the stream down and make an edit to it because of something I said. I went a little too far.
Used to airlift people.
If you were to subscribe, if you missed it live, you can subscribe on Patreon.
Be able to come into the Capitol complex very
and
quickly,
view the BitChute version of the entire clip.
An injured person away and take them to a medical facility for treatment, although we did also see DC Fire and EMS respond there as well. Monica Alba has been watching this story develop with me. Monica, what more can you tell us?
Well, we're getting our first reaction, Aaron, from
Scrappy. If you do hear from producer Dave, tell him to pop on and talk with us.
Leader Mitch McConnell, who says, praying for the United States Capitol police officers who were attacked at the Capitol. We are still learning what's taken place. Grateful to all the U.S. CP and first responders who are on the scene. So that's the real first official reaction.
And now you have to wonder about
on Capitol Hill, who we should point out aren't actually physically there.
We've seen this schism with Capitol Police. Several of the police felt like their higher-ups were working against them. This came out during the testimony after the Capitol riot.
White House or from Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
There's like a Trump faction within the Capitol Police.
Here through our colleague Julie Sirkin, who is on the ground. She covers Capitol Hill, and she is really noting a high.
This is his kind of thing. I would love to get his take on this.
Who have now marched to that area, and they're carrying shields. So they are also still in a posture where some of them are even telling her this is still a very active and fluid situation, and they were told essentially to march over there in high numbers. She says she sees dozens and dozens.
Wow.
Just in case. There are also
told to march over in high numbers.
And they're being extremely strict, as you can imagine, with who can come and go.
Militant Trump supporters among us everywhere.
Something else that our other reporters who cover the Justice Department are confirming to us now, the FBI is involved in the response. You might even see them in some of these images with their notable windbreakers that say it in bright yellow letters. They are on the scene already, also responding to what just happened in the last hour or so here, Aaron.
Monica, I know you've been monitoring what's been coming out of the White House about this, and Jen Psaki, this happened right as she was wrapping up her press briefing today. So
we've yet to have a statement from the White House that I know of.
He was traveling. We know he travels with staff. There likely would have been someone.
We think that the driver was the one shot.
What happened?
He got out of the car brandishing a knife.
At this point, even at Camp David, would have to know something.
We do know that shots were indeed fired. It doesn't seem like the driver was armed.
Traveling with, that's typically
something. But once again, this only happened within the last hour or so.
Movement, they let us know which group of personal aides and other support staff are accompanying.
As we understand it, the driver was indeed shot, but is alive and is in custody.
He's always going to have.
Apparently, the two officers that were injured were critically injured.
And internationally. So today
they were hit by the car.
Reed, who's the deputy chief of staff, Johannes
Or
Abraham,
were behind the barrier that the car
Security
hit.
Council, Anthony Bernal, who's an advisor to the president and the first lady, and then Stephen Gopfert, who is also a personal aide. So those are just the people.
That's why I'm assuming that it was indeed the driver that was shot. If he got out brandishing a knife after he just rammed a barricade, I would say it did not take long for them to shoot him. And it's amazing he's alive. So one has to speculate he's probably white.
Decisions about whether the president would need to speak to the nation, issue a statement, all of that is being evaluated right now.
But we don't know. That's all speculation.
Was mid-briefing, even though the president had already left the building for the Easter weekend, she was still answering reporter questions while this was all unfolding. And our own.
Yes, I forgot it is Good Friday, so that is one of the reasons why the Congress is not in session.
Back to us, given again, she was basically briefing as this was still developing, but she
a ginger too.
That again,
they have no soul, so you know, I mean,
accompanied by people for
those sociopaths can do anything.
So then they can brief him, and then they can make decisions about what would happen next.
Eat us Jesus Day.
Like with any of these very fast-moving.
You know, I haven't thought about it. I ought to make like a ham or something for Easter, shouldn't I?
This perspective to try to gather more information, learn more before issuing any kind of statement. But I think also the fact that this overarching reaction.
I might see if I can get Passion of the Christ in 4K, which is one of my favorite movies. I love Passion of the Christ.
They felt attacked. Their own officers.
I can watch Passion of the Christ in 4K. I'm going to fire that motherfucker up.
If you really think about everything that this force has gone through over the last nearly 3 months.
However, that is not Mel Gibson's best movie, though.
Here, given the backdrop.
Apocalyptico is totally Mel Gibson's best movie.
From Capitol Hill, there's a lot of debate now, Aaron, about whether they're going to study this or do a similar 9/11 style commission report into the security failures. And again, we know that they felt confident enough to remove the very outer perimeter fencing and go back to just the.
They felt confident enough to remove the outer perimeter, and then
as much of a risk or security
tries to ram
given the comparison to what we saw in the weeks following the insurrection at the Capitol. But as you can see again from this vehicle, those barriers did their job. They are always going to be up and only removed once Capitol Police have said a car can enter the premises. And again, this one was actually 2 full barriers away, but that fencing that you see there is what is likely to remain in place for a long time to come, given January 6th and what we are seeing here today, Aaron.
All right, Mom,
I would hope.
With us here, I want to stop down for a bit here and just sort of reset a little bit for you. First, the
right-wingers are why we can't have nice things.
The screen here is just outside the fencing, the barricading that was put up.
That's a whole lot of bacon.
Around the beginning of this year and the January 6th riots that we saw there. A large law enforcement presence here. It looks like there's
bacon and bureaucratic bootleggers.
U.S. Capitol Police, at least, and so we expect that we could be getting a statement, some sort of a briefing from leadership there with Capitol Police at any moment now. We're going to try to make sure we can bring that to you if it happens. At this point, the only official statement that we've seen from U.S. Capitol Police is the tweet that they put out a little less than an hour ago, saying that they were responding to the North Barricade vehicle access point on Constitution Avenue for reports of someone having.
Yes, this incident occurred about an hour and 15 minutes ago. It was reported at 1:02 p.m.
That a suspect was in
Eastern
custody,
time.
that the officers had been injured, and that all 3 of them, the 2 officers and the suspect, had been taken to the hospital. So that was the official statement. The only official statement we've gotten from U.S. Capitol Police as this story has been unfolding. Monica Alba, again, watching this with me and trying to gather more information as we go. Monica?
Aaron, we're learning more from our colleagues Tom Winter and Jonathan Dienst, who of course covers New York City, and they are reporting that the suspect in the U.S. Capitol attack that we've seen here is dead after being shot by police, citing multiple law enforcement officials who were briefed on the investigation. So again, that's coming.
Okay, so they are now reporting that the suspect is dead.
The suspect does appear to be dead. So that is a headline here that, of course, we could be getting more details on, as you mentioned, once we hear an
That is not confirmed.
briefing from officials, but we're also learning more from senior law enforcement officials who tell my colleagues that it does appear one of the officers was slashed in the face by this knife-wielding suspect. We know that after this person rammed through the barrier, got to that giant white portion and barricade that stopped it, that person did get out of the car, brandished a knife. It seems, obviously, according to this reporting citing a law enforcement official, got
what does that? When I first saw the headline, it said fatal incident.
Him in the face, according to
So, like, all my headlines said fatal incident.
The officer has been transported to the hospital.
My titles for the video and everything.
Several who are injured. It wasn't just this one person. So that is the latest. All of this is very fast moving.
I can't imagine brandishing a knife after you just
more and more information
rammed a vehicle
so that's the latest.
at a heavily fortified Capitol.
I can't help but to note that
I can't imagine you lived through that.
In my memory, the second time that, as we believe someone's died here, the second time that U.S. Capitol Police have been put in a position where they've had to engage with someone who tried to breach the security apparatus that surrounds the U.S. Capitol, and that person has been shot and died. In 2013, there was another incident where a car approached the U.S. Capitol, refused some of the orders to stop, and then slammed into a barricade before the woman who was in that car at the time back in 2013, who was then shot and died as a result of having come into the Capitol complex the way that she did. We also have one of our, I believe, producers on the phone with us. Julie Sirkin has been. Julie, you're inside the Capitol?
Hey, Aaron. No, I'm actually outside of the Capitol right now.
Okay, tell us what you know. You've been reporting out on this quite a bit over the last hour. What do you know?
Yeah, so I'm standing right now about a block from where the incident took place. I actually walked.
Honestly, I'm amazed she was able to get, or they,
National Guard troops marched towards me with shields.
It seems like it was a he. I'm amazed they were able to get that close.
Right now to kind of guard this barricade, and they closed, of course, all the entrances surrounding where the scene took place. I'm still seeing ambulance.
Given the high alert that DC has been on.
Just to give you a perspective of my location, I am adjacent to the Supreme Court and by the Senate office buildings, because that's where the incident, of course, took place. And as you mentioned earlier, of course, Congress is not in session right now. The senators and House members are not in the buildings. So when this breach happened, there was no one from government inside the building. But right now outside, it's a really chaotic scene. And the National Guard troops, the numbers just dwindled down in the last few weeks, and these barricades that were in front of me are now not here because they decided to lighten up security. And we're almost 3 months out from January 6th when that insurrection happened. But again, this.
And I mean, we're still. Mike Lindell made the proclamation that Trump is going to be back in office in August. So we've got like a whole summer.
It's a chaotic scene out here. The press
of stupid shit like this happening, I bet.
We're sort of standing on the outskirts. I tried to get in at different entrance points. I sort of walked the perimeter, and cops were really much just trying to figure things out and getting everything together. I watched as National Guard troops came out of the various office buildings to take their posts. They're fully armed, and it appears to be a pretty...
you're right. It is White Boy Summer.
The perimeter here, Aaron.
So, Julie,
the white boy terrorist summer. That's exactly what it's going to be, isn't it?
It seems as though they were already nearby with their gear, or that they were brought in to and I know the D.C. Armory, the National Guard Armory, is only 2 or 3 miles away from the Capitol.
It really seems like we've got some tensions bubbling under the surface here in the country.
So that's a good question. Of course,
the pandemic made people get cooped up for a while.
They have been after the attacks, but they did lessen the guard.
There's some angst that people need to get out, and
coming out of the office building. So I'm coming out of the office building.
It doesn't look like things are going to be pretty.
And I cover Congress, so I see the troops here every single day. They're not nearly as present as they were, but I think that.
And it doesn't help that we've still got Republicans,
if not all of them, some of them at least,
ginning up election conspiracies to pass their repressive voter laws.
Level of troops here, but again, this is nowhere near the level it's been. I mean, even
screaming
now,
bloody murder about shit at the border. We're going to talk about the border tonight. I've got a few different videos we're going to watch.
The Capitol complex and the Capitol Police right now, and there's about 3.5 dozen of them here, and I watched them march from the scene.
You don't want to give oxygen.
Police cars still are right now.
To their bad
Julie,
faith
what's their
arguments, but you
posture?
also have to
Do they-
deal with, what is going on in the
we saw some
news
of our live
and set
pictures
the
that they were
record
wearing
straight.
their, what looked like riot gear. They had shields, they had helmets that were with masks pulled down.
Also, I want to put pressure on
taking on a
Biden from the
defensive
left to do
posture
something about
as though they're
immigration.
blocking something, maybe anticipating something, or are they just sort of there just in case?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because their job is to always protect whatever assignment they're deployed to, but they are in full riot gear. They have face shields, they have regular shields, they have their weapons in tow, multiple guns, even the officers here, and they're kind of standing in front of the barricade in one line. Some officers on the outskirts appear, not as tense, not as...
I just replayed GTA 5, and just as soon as I finished it, I found out they were coming out with the PS5 version this summer, and I'm like, fuck!
Right, sort of the Senate side of the Capitol complex.
Because I played it originally on PS3 when it first came
It
out.
takes up a pretty large amount of space, and like I said,
I replayed it on PS5 just the other day.
Took place is in a saturated.
The driver was Matt Putz's lawyer.
Is in session, and even when I walked around on the House side of the Capitol, which is of course on the opposite side of where this attack took place,
If I was legal counsel for Matt Gaetz and I saw the Tucker Carlson interview the other night, I would indeed ram my car into a barrier
and
too.
eventually they said you're not allowed to enter anywhere near here. So in the last 20 minutes or so, when the National Guard troops marched,
I think we've got new
this is
sordid
still
details
unfolding.
about the
Like
Matt
I
Gaetz
said, the
affair
troop level
or
definitely
tonight's
decreased in the
show.
last few weeks. But
Looks like they've traced it back and they know the payments he made from his Cash App to women for sex services.
And now, of course, completely bare.
And Julie, last thing I'll ask you about the reports
I'm sticking by
about
my
landed or at
guess
least
that
come to
this
the
whole
Capitol
extortion
complex.
thing was
Were you
made
able
up by
to see or
Gaetz.
hear any helicopters in the time that you've been there?
That was a Hail Mary play on his part.
Actually, even now, just a few moments ago, I heard and I saw helicopters swirling around, really, in the last hour or so, trying to take a better look at the scene as this was all unfolding. One officer, even just a half an hour ago, I asked him if it was still an active shooter situation before we knew that the suspect was apprehended.
Hell, it might have been Matt Gaetz in the car.
It could be, and so they're really on guard here and high alert after what happened.
Great minds, Scrappy.
3 months ago, next week, and so this is very much still unfolding. They are still very on alert in their security.
I cannot believe
in 20 minutes.
even Nancy Pelosi is like, if the allegations are proven true, I'm like, he's an accused child sex trafficker. He is on the Judiciary Committee. Get him off of there yesterday.
She may be able to report for us. We'll come back to you. Alana Treen, a reporter with
it's not some he wasn't accused of insider trading or some campaign finance bullshit. He's accused of child sex trafficking.
Is raising a lot of eyebrows now is that U.S. Capitol Police, as Julie said, is going to be holding a briefing now around 2:45 p.m. is what they're aiming for, and this is a big deal. One of the biggest criticisms
We're looking about 20 minutes away from a briefing by Capitol Police.
The January 6th attack was that they weren't transparent. They weren't good at communicating what was happening on the ground in real time. They didn't hold a briefing, and it's something we've seen.
I feel like they don't care about finance shit, or like Dianne Feinstein. Like it seemed like she was insider trading, but apparently it was technically legal. Blah blah. It was one of those things, That's why you wait until an investigation. But fucking child sex trafficking, if you're accused of that, then you are automatically you have done something that is, but where there's smoke, there's fire. You put yourself at least parallel to a situation that allowed yourself to get that accusation thrown at you. You need to be off of the Judiciary Committee. It's a legitimate investigation. I'm amazed that DOJ wouldn't have informed the Judiciary, which I mean, up until the Democrats took over, Republicans wouldn't care.
Something that is not common.
Why wouldn't they have been briefed on the investigation?
Happened in the last few months.
Now I can understand them not pulling him off the Judiciary is to not tip Gaetz off to the investigation.
And I think it'll be interesting. Some questions I'm already hearing from
the man should not be on the Judiciary Committee at this moment. No, he shouldn't have been to begin with because he's Matt fucking Gaetz and he's an idiot.
Whether President Biden will continue to move forward with his plans to hold
You're right.
in front of Congress. That's
don't get me. I mean,
several weeks closer to the
you're
100
you're right. You're right.
Approaching on April 30th. Nowhere
that's
yet,
the reason why I'm so adamant about
plans,
supporting people like
also, what
Jamal Bowman, Corey Bush, AOC,
given what's
Ilhan
happening,
Omar,
people who are on the Hill, like Julie,
Rashida Tlaib,
on the program, are still on lockdown.
People that do not take money, that aren't there
that will continue
to enrich themselves, and that should be a sell. Right wingers are totally going towards this anti-corporate thing. I get called a commie that simps for corporations all the time. Makes no sense, I know. But they're going this anti-corporate route, so that's the way you sell them. Hey, cool, vote for the politicians that don't take corporate money. Here, let me name them for you.
From U.S. Capitol Police around 2:45 this afternoon, 2:45 Eastern Time. We'll, of course, be monitoring for that, and we'll bring it to you as it happens.
The Suez Canal thing, man.
Correspondent for investigations has been
Reddit can bring the financial markets to its knees. Our system is incredibly fragile.
Yes, I've got you, Aaron. So a couple of things that we're working on and we're learning about at this point. That vehicle that's crashed up against the barricade, the initial indications that we had heard or were suspected, I should say, is that the Capitol Police officers that were injured as a result of this incident were injured because they were rammed by.
And they were going fucking fast
that
to.
That may not be the case. In fact, the suspect, who we now understand, multiple law enforcement officials telling myself and my colleagues Jonathan Dienst and Pete Williams, that the suspect is deceased after being shot by police. But apparently, when that suspect exited that blue vehicle, tried to, or may in fact have, stabbed the Capitol Police officers, or at least one of them. And that's what may have led to their serious injuries. And then, of course, the suspect was shot by police and has now, we are told, died as a result of those injuries. Now, we don't know yet where this vehicle came from.
Oh, God, that sucks. I bet if Capitol Police were that close to him, they probably thought it was some sort of accident.
We want to be very clear about that and make sure that we have that information confirmed when we do report it. So the initial indication and information from the scene.
Well, hey, most citizens are one
incident or attack,
incident away from
person tried to get through that
catastrophe.
Barricade, crashed into it, exited the vehicle with a knife, and may have in fact stabbed one or more Capitol Police
so
officers.
So it's fitting that we live in a country
We're told
as
the person
well.
is a male.
One bad day away from the apocalypse.
Information just yet as we try to confirm that, but that male suspect was shot, taken to the hospital, and has now died as a result of those injuries. As far as a motive, as you might imagine, it is far too soon to know that at this point. The suspect would know what their motives were or are, and that suspect is dead, so that's going to make things a little bit more complicated. You can be assured in this day and age, with license plate readers and the information that law enforcement has at its fingertips, that who owns that car and any sort of registration information, that would be known to them already. But as we've seen in other incidents, that doesn't necessarily.
Well, I mean, it's possible by this evening his social media posts will be all over the place. We'll have a good idea.
So we are just.
If not by this evening, by tomorrow evening.
As law enforcement is being extra cautious to make sure they know who they're dealing with here. And that's the latest on this investigation so far.
We may very well get a name at this press conference coming up in about 15 minutes.
Tom, in some of our earlier coverage,
and if we get a name, internet sleuths are going to be on it. We're going to know everything about him by this evening.
Critical condition. What update do you have about the injuries that the officers in this incident sustained?
Yeah, Pete's a little bit more dialed in because of being in Washington, D.C., and because he's Pete.
They probably already know everything about him.
To that specific part of it. So, yes, it does sound like...
It's about an hour and a half after the incident occurred.
Critical condition, obviously, a number of police officers injured, one dying as a result of the Capitol attack on January 6th. So this has been a particularly troubling time and trying time for the United States Capitol Police Department.
And Tom, you sort of referenced the fact that the law enforcement on the scene here likely already know who the person who was in that car is and have started to check into the vehicle itself. Would that sort of indicate that there are tentacles, the FBI, for example, that are now sort of reaching out into wherever to figure out who this person was, what their motive was, who they know, and trying to get some answers outside of the scene that we're seeing in these live pictures?
That's exactly
that Justin Mullins guy that hosts the Patriot Patrol.
I'm not saying specific to this
he seemed like it. Did you hear what he said last night?
the people that do this type of work that I've spoken with in the past.
He borderline advocated for
the registration
genocide.
of the vehicle. Once they took the suspect, or in the process of taking the suspect to the hospital, they would.
I
go into
absolutely
their
believe
wallet,
that
try to
that
find
dude
some
that
sort of
hosts the Patriot
identification,
Patrol could
see
totally
that
be the
matches
guy
person
that
in
attacked the
vehicle.
Capitol.
But even then, somebody could come up with a fake identification, could have stolen the vehicle, could be a rental car, and so that information would be
did a
little bit
vosh.
more, difficult to get, or you would at least want to confirm it. From there, they would look for a criminal
I've
history,
yet
in
to
their database. Is there
walk by
anything that
my
they know about
underwear.
that person? Do they have fingerprints already on file? Any sort of criminal information through the FBI CGIS database? And then from
So
there,
I've yet to do
you
that
would
kind
begin
of
to
a
work
vosh.
backwards and say, okay, if they know who the person is, do they have a social media profile? Did they leave anything behind in the car?
Of course
Is
they
there anything
do.
there that could
It's
immediately
2021.
tell us,
Everybody has a social media
if there's anybody
profile.
else who could possibly be involved? Another piece of information that they may want to get is obviously any sort of motive that would be indicated either through those social media posts or through something left behind in the vehicle. Try to speak with those officers as they are trying to be treated, obviously, and see if
We're about
those
10 minutes
officers,
away from a press
can say
conference with
anything
Capitol
about
Police.
any
Hopefully we'll learn
statements that
something.
the suspect gave, if they gave any, in the course of exiting that vehicle. Was there anything that they've shouted or said? We've seen that in other incidents and attacks in the past, and that's been incredibly helpful. So those are things that, that's all kind of the initial work that needs to be done here. And you want to, of course, make sure that you're not going to have somebody else involved in a similar type.
I had a story that was something similar like that happened in
I
Texas.
suspect we would have seen that already.
And
All right,
you
Tom,
guys
let's,
don't even understand. For the
bring us up
nightly
to speed
show,
on how this investigation is likely to be folding out in the first
I
few minutes
probably
here.
pulled
Monica Alba is also
4 times
with
the
us.
stories
She's in
than what
Washington,
we
has been
actually do
watching
on
this
the show.
unfold and gathering information. Monica, there still appears
then have
to
to
be
whittle
a
it
very
down.
large law enforcement presence. We saw some men in uniform in military uniforms there as well.
There was some, like, it was
likely
2
from the
teachers were
DC
suspended,
National
and the
Guard. What more can you
assignment
tell
was
us
just
about,
into
what's unfolding at the scene
what?
here right now?
Huge law enforcement presence, Aaron. That's right. And I
love that you called him Chad Hanks. No. You were right when you said Chad Hanks, isn't it? He is a Chad.
Here we know, of course, that guardsmen from
He
all
might
across
be a
the
cool
country
dude,
were
and we've
brought
just
in
been.
the weeks after
Maybe
the
I'm
January
speaking
6th
for everyone. I didn't know who the fuck he
the
was the other
Capitol,
day.
and
The first
remember, it
video I
wasn't
saw of him was White
uncommon
Boy
to see
Summer. The
hundreds of
second
them
one was him
loading
getting his ass kicked by his
buses and
woman.
coming in and out for their shifts. Remember in those early
I
days,
have
he
no
was
clue who he
sleeping
was,
on
and
the
then I saw
floor of
I've got the
Capitol Hill in
picture of
hallways
his. Yeah,
before cops
he's Tom
brought
Hanks'
in and they
kid.
could make
So
more accommodations in nearby
just
hotels.
this
So we know
little
with that
sliver
context,
of
the
exposure
National Guard
I've had
represented
to
from
him
all over
has been.
brought in, but the DC National Guard specifically today, according to a
But I
tweet,
mean, you could take just a sliver of what I do and like hate me for sure.
to support the U.S. Capitol Police.
No, I'm
And
sorry
get into
to be
more detail, they
prejudiced
said, given again
to
this
you.
immediate response force, but it was something that
No,
was done
all I've heard is
quickly, and
the
that's what I think is
the
really
White Boy
notable here as
Summer
well.
and
When we
him
look
like
at the
yelling in
timeframe,
his
the fact that
accent.
officials are set to brief in just 10 minutes or
No,
so.
I've never heard him
that
actually
is
just
really,
talk.
really
No.
notable, given the fact that after the events of January 6th, we
Okay,
didn't even
okay.
get an immediate briefing from the U.S.
We'll check
Capitol
in with
Police. It took
Chad
so
Hanks
long
later
to get
tonight.
more information from them and from law enforcement. So a very different approach today, because of course also it's a very.
I might reach out to him, see if I can
scale,
get him on
and
the
that's
Troll
important
Patrol.
To point out here as well, the fact
All
that
right,
this is
all right,
one
we'll do it.
vehicle ramming through a barrier, but that did injure U.S.
Leaving office, I think it's important to remember that he was the president, so we should show some respect.
Psych! Pussyclad! Fuck them, Ross. Donald no one around but big boss man Biden. Fuck them, Ross. Pussyclad, boy. Go suck on a mother.
Is he trying to do a Jamaican accent? What the fuck? What? You're not endearing him to me. So now that's like the 4th exposure I've had to him. All 4 have been like comically bad.
monitoring, making sure everything's okay. So we're seeing a very, very heightened.
And you were trying to sell me on him.
Element to this now, given what we just saw over the last couple of hours. But the fact that we're about to get a lot more detail speaks to the urgency and some of the new leadership, perhaps, that was installed here for the U.S. Capitol Police and other agencies because of what experts say was such a failure in terms of what we saw in the initial response.
I've got his face just staring at me over here. I got
a new role in this narrative of getting us information more quickly. We saw those tweets really come very rapidly, just in the hours.
I'm sure he's fucking Tom Hanks's kid. Tom Hanks, like the most likable person ever, just comes across as like a fucking Chad Hanks is the opposite. You get a little taste of him and you hate him.
From people like the minority leader and other House leadership who are really putting the focus right now on the Capitol Police officers, extending prayers for them, thinking of them and their families, given
Don't make me get the merchandise.
Are injured. So I think we can expect to get more on their situations and how they're doing right now, especially those who are transported to the hospital from officials here. And again, the one
thing I might have to get a t-shirt
that is a little bit unusual given how much time has passed. We don't have any White House reaction at this point.
I'd go over well here in Alabama, I bet.
Is in the building behind me. She is still here at work monitoring the situation, even though the president is at Camp David, surrounded by a much smaller group of aides who are ostensibly bringing him up to speed on this. But what's also a little bit
not much to bring him up to speed on. It's really not.
Retreat, Aaron, is that
it looks like it was just a lone coup.
But press
the situation has been neutralized. It's really nothing.
Where that's the case. When the president goes to Delaware,
I'm just sitting here bullshitting with you guys until we get to the press conference. We'll see if we learn something.
Journalists who would travel with him, but Camp David is actually an exception given it's outfitted to really be another executive residence and retreat, and he has all of the security and infrastructure there in place. It's about a 40-minute chopper ride away. So he
to invade Crimea is part of the Ukraine, but Russia invaded it about a decade ago or something and took it over. They've been occupying it. So you're saying Ukraine is going to try to take Crimea back?
Right now in Washington, Monica, thank you for that. We'll reiterate that we do anticipate a briefing from U.S. Capitol Police in the next few minutes here. I want to bring in Jim Kavanaugh, who is an MSNBC, NBC.
Maybe longer than a decade ago. That might have been like
Special Agent in charge,
2009.
former hostage negotiator. Jim, you and I have had a few conversations and instances like this where we've watched scenes of this nature unfold. I want to just get your expert perspective on what's happening in Washington right now.
Well, it looks like a one-person attack.
Yeah, to approve the strategy of deoccupation and reintegration of the temporarily occupied territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Yeah.
Barricade that's implanted.
So yeah, they're wanting their fucking territory back.
Nobody's going to bust through that.
Am I from Duck Dynasty? Fuck no.
In front of that, maybe 40 feet or so.
I do. Uncle Phil, is that what his name is, or was that's the dude from? That's Fresh Prince.
So if the car hit the officers,
it's Phil is the patriarch of the family, right? The dumb fucks. I played videos of him and made fun of him. Phil would not enjoy me in any way, shape, or form. Do they call him Uncle Phil?
Pete Williams.
Because James Avery needs to get up out of the grave and come slap that motherfucker.
And the assailant was
he has some fucking colloquial name, right?
That sounds like what's transpired. An attack with a knife and a car first, then a knife.
They were not.
Looks like what we have, is it in his mind?
I don't understand, I don't understand how you pop into my stream, see me wearing a fucking pop bandana and be like, are you from Duck Dynasty? What? Is it just the bandana and the long hair? Because, I'm a hippie. I'm not a fucking poser redneck. Look up what the Duck Dynasty people look like before they got their show. That whole, the beard and the long hair shit, that's all for show. They're yuppies.
Expect we're going to hear from the Capitol Police.
They all drive big trucks that never see any dirt.
Folks working their way. You look at toward the top of your screen there on the left.
Go on. Look
those
them
are the
up.
sorts of uniforms that you
Redux.
anticipate leadership wearing, and so I would expect that we're going to hear from the U.S. Capitol Police Chief Pittman, the acting police.
They act like rich old people from the southern suburbs, specifically.
At the U.S. Capitol, along with some people from
There's a fake niceness and a hypocrisy and a self-righteous condescension all rolled
into it. This is a sort of
into
incident where many of the dozens of law enforcement agencies that are in Washington, D.C. would come together to get control of a scene and then begin investigating.
I'm telling you to look up pictures of what they look like before their TV show and know that they look like they do just for the TV show, and you will understand exactly how fake they are.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. I said the United States Capitol Police has their own detective bureau, and you see those detectives are walking around the
Well, you know what we always say around here?
They start the investigation.
Right-wingers are morons.
But I mean, it's their ticket, as we say. They're the first ones. It's their man or woman that was assaulted.
You can get you a sweet right-wingers or morons t-shirt right down here at the freaking store. I'm wearing mine right now.
There's no, Capitol Police has their own bomb squad.
Quality merchandise mocking idiot right-wingers is our slogan.
Have a bomb in it, and here comes the chief.
Jim, how much more difficult is
getting ready to launch the all-new freaking store coming up on 4/20, the one-year anniversary spectacular
figure out other ways? Actually, Jim, an NBC News special
edition of the Troll Patrol live stream.
This is an NBC News special report.
NBC News had to throw in a stinger there.
Good day, everyone. Capitol Police are briefing on that fatal security incident outside the U.S. Capitol this afternoon when a suspect rammed a car into a barrier and then wielded a knife at Capitol Police officers. At least 2 injured, and the driver was killed. Let's listen.
The suspect exited the vehicle with a knife in hand. Our officers then engaged that suspect. He did not respond to verbal commands. The suspect did start lunging toward U.S. Capitol Police officers, at which time U.S. Capitol Police officers fired upon the suspect. At this time, the suspect has been pronounced deceased. 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers were transported to 2 different hospitals, and it is with a very, very heavy heart that I announce one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries.
Oh, shit.
We are not able to release any information, names, age, date of birth, or anything of that nature at this time because we still have to notify the next of kin. I just ask that the public continue to keep U.S. Capitol Police and their families in your prayers. This has been an extremely difficult time for U.S. Capitol Police after the events of January 6th and now the events that have occurred here today. So I ask that you keep our U.S. Capitol Police family in your thoughts and prayers. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Metropolitan Police Chief, Mr. Robert Conti, for the Metropolitan Police Department's portion of this investigation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Conti, Acting Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department.
What up, Bob?
Our members responded to the U.S. Capitol today just after 1:00 p.m. To investigate an officer-involved shooting. At this time, the Metropolitan Police Department's
we'll talk about Duck Dynasty some more here in just a little bit. Let's listen to the press conference.
We'll now take over the investigation with respect to the shooting death that occurred as well as the officer's death. There's not a lot of information that we can release to the public at this time, but we certainly will be working very closely with our partners at the Park Police, at the U.S. Capitol Police. At this time, I just want to extend my deepest condolences on behalf of the entire Metropolitan Police Department to all of the officers at the United States Capitol Police for their service and unfortunately for the loss of life that have occurred here today at the United States Capitol Police.
there an ongoing threat here on Capitol Hill or in the neighborhood? What can you tell residents that live here as well as folks that work in this area?
At this time, it does not appear to be an ongoing threat. Obviously, we're in the very early stages of our investigation. We need to obviously understand the motivation behind this senseless act. So the Metropolitan Police Department will certainly be doing that.
I know you said the suspect is dead, sir. Any reason?
Of course we're American.
The Capitol Police or MPD.
America.
Any indication that he was somebody that had been around the Capitol before, maybe spotted, anything like that?
It does not appear that he is known to the Capitol Police or the Metropolitan Police Department at this time.
Is this a terrorism-related?
Sir?
Is this a terrorism-related incident?
It does not appear to be terrorism related, but obviously we'll continue to investigate to see if there's some type of nexus along those lines.
Will
Yes,
the
sir.
National Guard posture change at all? What's their mission look like the next couple of days?
I'll refer that to the United States Capitol Police.
Chief, did the suspect say anything or yell anything at the time?
I would say that at this time, the investigation is still in its preliminary stages, so we don't have that information. And the Capitol Police, as far as its security posture, remains in a steady state at this time. We are very thankful for our National Guard partnership. We do have National Guard on the campus, but the security posture at this time remains the same.
Chief, you said that obviously the vote, you're still looking at the motive. I understand that. Any reason to believe that there was any specific target of member? Was there a specific member of Congress that the suspect may have been trying to go after?
Oh, they can't tell that.
We do not have the suspect on file with U.S. Capitol Police, so there's no indication at this time that there's any nexus to any member of Congress. Yes, ma'am.
Drugs or alcohol involved? Do you believe you found any of that in the car?
Yes. Hospitals will throw you out.
Ongoing.
They legally cannot deny you care, but that doesn't mean they're not going to
a knife in hand, and at that time he started.
They throw homeless people out
Run
routinely.
aggressively toward U.S. Capitol Police office. No, that part of the investigation is still ongoing. The scene is still being processed by Metropolitan Police Department, so we will have additional information at a later time.
Did the suspect transported to hospital? Did the suspect ever come in contact? I know you mentioned the lunge, but did the suspect come in contact and wrestle with the police?
50.
The investigation is on.
They charge you like $250.
We can see from video at this time. I do not see the suspect wrestling with a U.S. Capitol Police officer, but when he exited the vehicle, the knife was clearly in his hand, and he did start to run.
You're going like just 100% mark up. It's something like.
So at this time,
fucking 10,000% mark up.
I am going to take. I turn it back over to Metropolitan Police Department's chief. Again, I ask you to please keep the United States Capitol Police family in your thoughts and prayers at this time. It has been an extremely difficult and challenging year for us. But
on this Good Friday,
we'll get through this, and we do appreciate the community's support. Thank you.
Some of that good if you got it.
Hey, folks. We understand that you guys have a lot of questions. Obviously, this is a complex investigation. We are going to be putting out more information as we can on social media, and if we decide to do any more briefings later on, we'll of course let you guys know right away. Thank you.
Chief, can you give us an update on Chief Conte? Can we ask you one more question?
Sure.
One question I have. Looking at the grand fabric of all of this, USCP has changed their intelligence the way they're sharing it. They've been doing what they can to try to beef up the security here, and still they're under attack. What is the answer?
Yeah, well, I think, just part of our responsibilities and duties as law enforcement officers, we're here to protect and serve community. Clearly, this was someone who was actively trying to...
Scrappy, I'm sorry, man.
Whoever, or whatever. We just don't know right now. So we have a responsibility to investigate that, to get to the bottom of this, whether the attack was at law enforcement...
Debt slavery, that is.
...responsibility to get to the bottom of it, and we'll do that. Thank you.
Suspect die at the scene or at the hospital, sir?
And you have been listening to...
There are plans on the table, possibly, to forgive at least some medical debt. I hope some form of that goes by I guess the federal government would purchase the debt and then forgive it. A lot of countries, you would be fixed up, sent on your way with no bill. Virtually every country that ranks ahead of us in healthcare outcomes would do that. So I do not understand the fighting against universal healthcare. It's proven. Like, you can't argue with it. We spend more on healthcare than any other country in the world. Than like the next 10 countries below us combined, we spend more on healthcare. I'm sorry, that might have been military. We spend the next 10 countries combined on military. Which shows you where our priorities are. But we spend more than any other fucking country by a fucking mile. And produce worse outcomes. So, your argument that fine with being dead is a really weird argument. No, you don't. What do you mean pay insurance? You don't need insurance when it's covered. In a single-payer universal system, the government is footing your tab for insurance through your tax dollars, and it's more efficient. That has been proven. Like, I don't know why we keep having to have this, or I can show you all the data. We are paying more per person in the United States for our healthcare system than any of the Scandinavian countries, by far. And South Korea. Than Japan. What? Because the word single payer means that the government is the single payer that provides the insurance. And the way insurance works is the more people in the pool, the cheaper it is. So therefore, the cheapest system you can have is when everybody is in the pool, because insurance works by dispersing risk. In both experience and empathy, in fiscal policy, every way you cut it, universal single-payer healthcare is the best system. Scrappy ain't gonna take no shit. I love it. Yes, the government relies on taxes. The people, when you add up the taxes, okay, say you live in Sweden or you live in Britain, when you add up the taxes that you pay to pay for health care, it is less than what we pay for the people that are lucky enough to have insurance. And I do not understand. If you are advocating for the private system, I am positive you probably never interacted with it. You've never had a parent that has had to have multiple surgeries, that has had to see doctor after doctor, that had an ailment that they couldn't identify for years, and had to spend more time on the phone with insurance companies arguing with them to get them to pay than actually going to doctor's visits. Anybody that would argue for that system has never actually experienced it. I'm sorry. Maybe you're playing devil's advocate here and you're trying to test me to see how I argue back. I'm exhausted. And one of the weird things is, so I once upon a time had a friend that's a right-wing radio talk show host. He's no longer friends with me because he didn't like me fact-checking him on Twitter. That's another story. But one time we got finished filming a segment. I was a production tech at the TV station. He had a segment. He's coming off the segment, and I'm making the argument about healthcare. This is probably 2016. Making the argument about healthcare, and he's like, "No. You've won. where you don't even have to make the argument anymore. It's going to be a universal system. And I'm like, because this is a right-winger, a right-wing talk show host. And he's like saying, no, you guys won. It's going to be a universal system is what it's going to look like now. And I was like, I won? When the fuck did I win that argument? That was 5 years ago. He told me that we won the argument we were getting. And now at this time, it was almost a certainty in everybody's mind that Hillary Clinton would be president in 2016. So maybe that's what he was thinking. This would have been maybe even before the rise of Trump in the prime, when nobody was taking him seriously still. What do you mean you're pointing out the obvious? Well, no, America is not the worst country. No, but we rank at the bottom of countries that have universal health care. We rank below every other country that has universal health care. Have you ever experienced American health care? Have you been in the U.S. and had to interact with our system? Because, no, that's the ignorance. You use the NHS. Have you ever been in the U.S. and had to visit a private hospital? Yeah, I'm wondering, have you dealt with it? Have you lived here? And even if you were just visiting, you wouldn't even really experience it, because you could fucking walk out and never pay your bill, and like they're not gonna fucking, how are they gonna get you? You go back overseas. They can't garnish your wages and shit. So you've never really interacted with our system, have you? I mean, just like, how many people are uninsured right now? It's still like 30, 40 million people. But you rank higher than us in healthcare outcomes. You spend less than us. You spend less than us and have better healthcare outcomes. And plus, just the fact that, like, man, like, you don't know that, like, insurance makes money. First of all, we're hyper-capitalist. I know Britain's capitalist, and you've got a good dose of it, but you don't know how hyper-capitalist the U.S. is. Can you imagine that every little thing that you do at a hospital or at a doctor's office, you have to call and argue with somebody on the phone to get them to pay for it, because that insurance company is looking for any way they can to deny you, because it's far cheaper for them to pay somebody fucking $40, $50 an hour to sit and argue with you on the phone and look through loopholes in your fucking policy, which there are plentiful, than to actually pay for your care. So they look for any way they can to deny you. And even that's, you don't even know about deductibles. Fucking, you have to spend so much money before your premiums even kick in. You have to reach a certain amount, like $5,000, $10,000. You have to go and spend $5,000 at the doctor before your shit even kicks in. So, and like, if there's a single payer healthcare system, it doesn't eliminate private insurance. You can get private insurance on top. Because you have that in Britain, don't you? Are you agreeing with me? It doesn't seem like it. I am in favor of expanding our current system that we call Medicare, which has the highest satisfactory rating of any healthcare system in the U.S. Medicare, administered by the U.S. government. I am for expanding Medicare to cover everybody in a plan known as Medicare for All. That is my policy position, because that is the most doable position. And Medicare is still kind of shit. But if you were to expand Medicare, that gives the government more bargaining power. Because once again, it goes back to dispersing risk. How many people are in the pool? If you have everybody in the pool, then the government has a lot more leeway in being able to negotiate drug prices with the drug companies, to be able to negotiate rates with hospitals and shit. Taxpayers, fucking, we just piss away fucking billions a year on fucking nothing. Wasting it on planes, on guns, on ammunitions that just sit in fucking warehouses that the military gets out and they play war games with sometimes. We produce an overabundance of this shit, and it's a fucking jobs program because, you know, Boeing's got plants in a congressional district. Is it trillions a year? Did I miss it? Trillions a fucking year. But it's you've got Boeing, you've got all these different, Warlord, what's going on? Oh, shit, I will catch you up on the actual news because we've gotten off on fucking tangents. I was raving about the military and Medicare for all. The Capitol is on lockdown. We have one Capitol Police officer is dead after a suspect rammed a barricade. The suspect got out of the car wielding a knife. Apparently, he stabbed a Capitol Police officer. We believe that's the one that died. There's another one that's injured. The suspect was shot by Capitol Police, is dead. We do not know a motive. This occurred about 2 hours ago at 1:02 Eastern Time. Lawmakers are not on Capitol Hill as it is Good Friday. Joe Biden has already left for Camp David. Jen Psaki was giving a press conference. We just finished up with a press conference from Capitol Police where they didn't tell us anything, which they don't have anything to tell us. I was hoping they might release the suspect's name, but they need to notify next of kin and all that good shit. But then we got this guy, I don't even know, he says he's agreeing with me, but he seems to be arguing against a Medicare for all system, or perhaps he's just kind of playing devil's advocate and he wants to see the way I argue back with him. Touché. So in that case, I'm sorry if I got frustrated with you. And once again, that's why I told the story about the right-wing radio host from years ago. He's like, oh, you already won the argument. Well, it's 5 years later and I'm still having the same damn argument. We don't want to maintain an empire. That's the thing. We don't want to You're talking to a faction, actual leftists that don't want to we want to pull all our troops back. We don't want the bases anywhere in the fucking world. We want to use that money to pay for education and roads and healthcare here in this country and bring us into the fucking 21st century and set us up to have high-speed rail, space exploration. I don't want to leave space exploration up to fucking idiots like Elon Musk. I want to properly fund that shit. We can go sailing through the stars. I would love that, but holy shit, like getting to that point, I'll accept just having a functioning democracy in the U.S. The way I would assume, and you would agree with me on this, Scrappy, is that the way you would get to this one world government free of profit and currency is through expanding democracy. I think. Or at least that's the most logical way. Ah, yes, my friend Sparkles. She's very much in the combat boots and burn shit down camp. I didn't say you, I mean, like, her thought process was always like, why haven't we put on combat boots? When were we putting combat boots on? Like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm with you. And I feel really sorry because in probably November of 2019, I told her, hey, it's all good. At this time next year, we'll be voting for Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. Because I threw Elizabeth Warren in there because Sparkle's really hardcore feminist. Like, she likes Bernie, but she'd rather see a woman. She's like, I'm tired of crusty old white men. I get it. I understand. So I'm like, we're either going to be voting for Bernie or Elizabeth Warren because, you know, this is a year out from the election. Like, the primaries are just getting started. I think it was right after Bernie had a heart attack, too, and he was bouncing back up in the polls. Like, it's okay. We're going to be voting for Bernie. We're going to be voting for Elizabeth Warren. Everything's going to be fine. God, I had to apologize to her. I'm so sorry. Do you guys want to watch Sakai's breathing? Jen Psaki. I hate that I keep fucking. When I see it like that, I fuck it up. What you guys don't know is I spell it differently in my notes so that I don't fuck it up. Yes, throw me Jen Psaki's breathing. We'll totally watch it. Oh, she's probably not even talking about this, is she? Or did she get informed of it, like, right at the very end? So yeah, to catch everybody up, one officer has died. Oh, this was the COVID passports. Jen Psaki was speaking on while this was going on.
You talked about the new CDC guidelines earlier for travel.
Yeah.
And if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to have a COVID test if you're traveling abroad. How do you police that?
How do we release it?
Who let his British bollocks in there?
That.
I mean, do you have vaccine passports?
That's a private sector initiative, and one that we expect that they would be the drivers of to determine. It's just, these are public health guidelines in terms of what is safe, and that's why the CDC updated them.
Bapper.
Martin Walsh talking about how people are wary about coming back to work because
Yeah.
of these things. Do you think that there might come a time where you need to have vaccine passports, which will kind of be your gateway to carrying on normal life?
Again, this was a proposal made. A lot of private sector industries and companies, whether it's the airlines or even venues where they're looking forward to having big ticket events or soccer games, they're looking for ways to figure out how they can bring people back to normal and make things normal again. So this is really driven by the private sector, but and we'll see what they come up with.
Was that her being informed? What was going on? No, this would have been before that. It was Jen Psaki earlier. Let's see if we've got an update here for a hop
January 6th, now 3 months ago. And it was only a few days after that when the remains of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick were brought down in a caravan of police vehicles that made their way down these very streets.
I smoked so much pot while we've been doing the stream. I'm starving.
Any winter in Washington, D.C. This is not normally what this Capitol complex looks like. And I got to tell you, it was just under 2 weeks ago, actually, 2 weekends ago, when they took down.
I still haven't ate brownies.
Layer of fencing here. They restricted folks even up until this point, and there was sort of a spring atmosphere in the air when that first layer of fencing began coming down.
I like my brownies warm anyway. I would have warmed them
up. The
up.
Incident there, where that car hit those barriers, is that other layer of fencing that is not normally there. That fencing went up in the day.
They are high end. She made everything with like Ghirardelli and like the high end butter and shit. Like she got fucking
to conduct an overview of what
clarified butter or
needed
whatever
to be in place, so that an event like January 6th wouldn't happen again, or other serious.
They are top notch.
Incidents serious security incidents wouldn't take place. And one of the issues he said is that
that's another thing. They're
government needs
like
to take
fucking
seriously the threat within. Of course, we still know
insane amount of TH. I don't even fucking know how much of thousands of milligrams
but at
probably.
the same time, when you're looking at
they're not
the
your
incident
what
you do see is that a barrier
over the counter
stopped that car.
dispensary
and
brownies.
Now we've learned that one officer was injured and another officer killed.
That's why I've like every night, like I try to get my shit done so I can have the brownies so I can be comatose.
The members, but also their staffs.
Last time she spiked one of my milkshakes with I have no clue how much she put in my milkshake.
The public comes.
And I laid in the floor. She ordered DoorDash. I'm laying over here in the corner like I don't want to see
members'
anybody.
offices, and ever since January 6th, that has not been able to take place. And I think what today's event, unfortunately,
do you know how? Have you looked it up on a forum?
U.S. Capitol Police are playing an ever important role here around this Capitol perimeter here, but also that those conversations that are taking place not only among U.S. Capitol Police but other federal law enforcement agencies, and as well as the Senate and the House of Representatives about what type of infrastructure needs to be up here long term, that those conversations remain prevalent today, and that this was not just a matter of January 6th, but this is a matter of understanding what security needs to be in place here in the long haul.
Vaughn, since you're on the ground there, I do want to ask you and get some perspective about the layout around the Capitol right now as we're looking at one picture of the dome and a picture of the car that is still on the scene, the car that rammed the barricade there, a barricade that would have been fairly close to the Capitol building itself. And I'll note for our viewers that the lockdown at the Capitol has been lifted in the last few minutes earlier.
It doesn't seem like anybody has even touched the vehicle. I'm surprised there hasn't been
for no one to try to enter the complex.
A forensics team already in there.
Lockdown's been lifted now, but Vaughn,
I haven't seen anybody taking pictures.
That was put up post January 6th.
Maybe they did it directly after the event. Like maybe they've already been there, and that's why.
In comparison to where this
I figure if they've done that, why wouldn't they?
Was there fencing there toward? I guess you're south of the actual Capitol.
Ooh, that doesn't. As I understand it, the kratom doesn't taste very good, does it?
Up until I'm gonna have Scritch walk around here with us.
Like if you get the little vials of it, like it's kind of yucky,
it was
right?
Not until Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago. So about 12 days ago, cars were still not allowed to drive even through this intersection.
But hey, this is like fucking mushrooms. Like they taste like dirt. Magic mushrooms.
This was all closed off up until now. Obviously,
eat your
police
dirt.
have put up a perimeter here yet again after today's incident here. But no, this is generally an open
and just swallow them like you would a pill.
Until 12 days ago that they actually opened this area again to the general public and to cars. And so that very area that you're looking at, cars were not able to drive past the U.S. Supreme Court, past those U.S. Senate and U.S. House offices, and get even that close to the U.S. Capitol. We should know, you see that barrier that the car struck. That barrier is always there. That barrier existed before January 6th. And
there we go. Maybe that's a photographer right there.
You only see whether it be top leadership of Congress or folks from the executive branch or some others that are able to drive down. But those barriers.
All right, that'll do it for this stream. We're not going to learn anything else. Probably by the time we come on for the regular show, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll know the suspect's name. And if that happens, we'll probably know at least something about his social media profile. All right, we will see you here in a few hours on the Troll Patrol live.